Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Wisdom and Justice. So today's episode is called either shirts on or shirts off. Everybody's shirts on or everybody's shirts off. What this has to do with is a recurring theme you're going to see in this channel. It talks about one law, and I discussed that on one of my first videos and discussed that even in my last video talking about what's going on with the Crumley case with the Oxford shooter and about having a universal set of laws and not changing it depending on the groups that we like or we don't like. One of the things that we need to think about is this society is very symptomatic. They fix things at the symptom level. Let's go back to what we talked about a little bit with the Oxford case, the mass shootings. There's actually a proposal right now in the Michigan's legislation to stop mass shootings. They're going to cap or concatenate magazine limits for handheld guns. Because this was a handheld gun. This wasn't an AR. Handheld guns, I think from 9 to 7 or something like that. Cap them at 7. This is the legislation that's being pushed. And they're saying if you only allow for 7 bullets in a gun, it will prevent mass shooting. This is a very disturbing line of thinking, in my opinion. Number one, is coming from a lawmaker. It's coming from people that we look up to, kids look up to, even adults look up to. So the reason why this will never work is a couple of things. Number one, there's no limit to how many magazines you can buy. So if you limit it from 9 to 7, all someone can do is just buy 2 or 3 more magazines, or 10 magazines, or 30 magazines. There's actually no limit, and there's no way to ever track if someone buys a magazine or not. So you can have a whole backpack full of magazines capped out at 7, and you can still kill just as many people, if not more. Secondly, is not really getting towards secondly, you have to think about it, just having 2 less bullets in a gun, 2 less deaths. That's if he hit a target every time. So I don't understand that line of thinking. Getting rid of guns and limiting the amount of bullets is not going to stop the mass shooting. You have to find out common denominators throughout all these different schools and these arenas. I actually know what it is. It's actually the school. The school is actually creating bullying conditions and mental health conditions where these type of things are bound to occur. But aside from that, when you start talking about having a universal rule, universal law. So when we're looking at solving the problems with guns in schools, we're solving it at a symptomatic level. They're not solving it at any deep-rooted level. And it's the same way with anything in life. Here's the great thing. Here's what can make you very, very wise. This will make you you can be a sage at a very young age. You can understand how a problem in the world works in one particular area. You can take that same solution. If you have a solution, you can run it across the board and it'll be the same thing for everyone. So think about what's going on with healthcare right now. We call it healthcare, but it's really sick care because we don't do anything preventative. Remember, we had the old adage, what is it? An apple a day keeps apple a day keeps a doctor away, but this was the one. An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Think about that. That adage is from our great-great-parents, not even that's our great-great-parents. An ounce of prevention. So a little bit of prevention is better than measures in which we're going to try to all these laws to stop guns. You got to work on the prevention. That's better than a pound of cure. That's very, very powerful. And if they were saying that back in the early 1900s, 1800s, that means they were saying it back even earlier than that and since the beginning of the time. That's what I call nature's wisdom. And it can stand the test of time. You can say the same thing today as it was 1,500 years ago, as it was 100 years ago, as it was 5, 10 years ago. That type of reasoning and logic, if it can go into any time period, that's real logic, that's real wisdom, that's real justice, that's real judgment. So in this particular case, the things in our society were very symptomatic. So the thing is, when it starts coming to rules for men and women, just think about this. So we're going to get to it. Shirts on, shirts off. We're going to get to this. I want you to understand we're trying to build this foundation. Think about voting laws now. Now we're having a lot of different issues with voting laws, and no matter what side of the fence you are on right now with voting, it doesn't really matter. This is what we do know for sure. Women, particularly white women, weren't even allowed to vote until the Voting Rights Act. What was that, in the 60s, 50s, and 60s? 60s? So that's not even that's barely a generation, okay? Up until that time, you could have talked to a woman, particularly a white woman, and she would have thought she had her freedom. She would have thought, hey, you know what, I'm free because I'm able to do this, and that, but you weren't able to legally vote. So now you're able to legally vote. You couldn't even imagine not voting. Could you imagine telling a woman today she can't vote? Could you imagine the uproar? I mean, you're talking about the riot at the Capitol. Man, there would be a nuclear missile fired at the Earth from the moon with all the women on this ship, right? I mean, it would be crazy. We were able to do that. So the thing is, we always are looking at if we're always looking to make a change. When that change affects us, you'll always be prisoner to the things that aren't being changed because you won't even know they're not being changed. So the thing is, during the time when the Voting Rights Act, think about all the groups that were being enfranchised, all the minority groups that were being disenfranchised. But that didn't really come into play until they figured, hey, we're being disenfranchised too. Yeah, they're not allowed to vote, but it's affecting us not voting. So now let's us vote. Now we can get them to vote. It's a wrong way to think about it. Same thing with the Montgomery boycott. That there was never a resolution to it because the only reason why they allowed blacks on the bus was because of money. It wasn't because of the moral thing or because they did the right thing. It was because of money. So now let's take today. Today, a man can go on a beach and take off his shirt. Now, the same thing that women like in men like in women. So men like a woman with a nice chest or what have you, if that entices them or what have you. Women are also enticed with nice chests with men. So why is a man allowed to have his shirt off in a beach environment and a woman is not? Now we gotta think about. Now we can say that's just the way it is. That's not a logical way of thinking, because if that's just the way it is, then women you shouldn't be allowed to vote, because that's just always the way that it was. Until you look at it now and be like, man, that was really whack. That was really crazy that we couldn't vote. In fact, that was sexist and that was wrong. It was. So we need to look at this in that same light. Why is a man allowed to have his shirt off and a woman isn't? We got to think about the reasons that we hear. First of all, that's the way it always was. I just told you. That's a very illogical argument. Anything dealing with the sexualization of a woman, well, that's you. You can make it the sexualization of a man, because there are women who slob over men with their shirt off. So the same thing from the sexualization, it could go men and women. And if it's hypersexualized, you hypersexualized it. You meaning ubiquitously, meaning society hypersexualized it. Women certainly didn't hypersexualize it. So if a chest is considered a sexual object for men and women, and it is, because women drool over the Chippendales, they drool over the men with the nice chest, the Jared Leto's and the, what's the guy, American Woman, Lisa Bonet's, that Lenny Kravitz, you know, these are all the people that they swoon over because of their chest. Then this should be something that men should be modest and put, and cover up to in a modest way, the same way we have women to cover up. So the third argument is, as far as a woman, because that's what she feeds her babies with. That's a really, once again, it's not a very logical argument. I would expect us that at this time with the college education and Ivy League schools and all this post-education and secondary education, we have master's and doctor's degrees. I would expect us to come up with a better answer than because this is what she feeds her kids with. Well, a lot of women don't breastfeed. What about the women who don't have kids? Secondly, the women who do, because she feeds her baby. So if you fed your baby with, like birds feed their babies with their mouths, we're never going to make a mouth a sexual object. You got to really think about this. This is something that we as a society have allowed to be hypersexualized, because we sexualize everything. I'm actually going to do a video on that. We sexualize everything. When I was coming up, there used to be a commercial for a car named Celica. Actually, My aunt used to drive one, a Celica. Called it a sexy car. How is a car sexy? Why are we bringing sex into this? There used to be Rallies used to do a rally burger. I think they're Checkers now. They used to have a burger called the Big Buford, and it had somebody, with the big sandwich, and they were using their mouth and all this stuff. I'm like, man, you would put this. I was kids then. Like, man, you would put this on TV. Like, now we're about to put sex into a hamburger. We really got to think about this. We got to think about the things that we say that are sexy. How's a piece of sheet metal, a piece of metal sexy? It's really scary. It's wrong, and it's demonic, and it's like witchcraft. Like, if you think about what's going on with this, the way we think about this stuff. So once again, you haven't shown me any good reason why a woman should have her shirt on and a man shouldn't. Just the way it's been in society, it's a poor argument. It's a poor argument, because what we find out is our society evolves but it doesn't evolve in a way where we aspire to something higher. It evolves to something where we always should have been. Women should have always been voting with men. Blacks should have always had the opportunity to be able to vote, and all these things like that. So we gotta think about this. So shirts on, shirts off. So this is what I'm proposing: shirts on, shirts off. So everyone, we keep your shirts on in the swimming pool, like we tell women to do. When I say shirts on, I'm not saying we can't have different styles or whatever style, but I'm just saying either we impose the same restrictions on everyone, or we don't put any restrictions on anyone. And what we're going to find is the men are going to say, okay, well, we should just put our shirts on. Let's not solve that particular problem. Let's look at the bigger issue now. What are other things that we're doing, not just between men and women, but between other ethnic races and things of that nature, where we say this needs to be universally the same? In the name of this channel, Wisdom and Justice, and I say that wisdom and justice go hand in hand. One of them is justice. We can't say these people don't deserve justice just because I hate so-called African Americans. You can hate them, go ahead. But you can't do unjust things and make up false evidence and false cases and all these other things that happen and go on just because you don't like someone, and consider yourself a just person. Consider yourself someone who pledges allegiance to the flag and all these things that they stand for, when you really don't stand for that. You only stand for if it's someone, or if it's an ethnic group, or if it's a gender that agrees with what you agree with. So women, I'm really interested in hearing your opinion on this, because I know this may seem very wild to you, but I'm just interested in hearing an argument on why it shouldn't be everyone keeps their shirts on or everyone keeps their shirts off. I'm just interested, or there's no restrictions. There's no restrictions either way. And if we're going to have restrictions on women on this, then we need to apply the same restrictions on the men. And that's all that I'm saying on that. So I'm interested in your opinion on that. I kind of got into some other things because I'm trying to show you and build a foundation, but I'm just interested. Shirts on, shirts off. Interested in your thoughts.